Hi guys, welcome back to SimLive. My name is Kiki and today I'll be creating Qi'ra from Solo, a Star Wars story. And I wanted to create her face skin, so I looked up some tutorials online and decided to try one by Golly Haha, which I'll link in the description down below. I've already prepared a 3D image of Emilia Clarke's face and a front face one. The idea is that you position those over the 3D face and liquefy them to the Sim's face shape. Now of course in this process you lose a lot of Emilia's features, but I'm hoping that once I'm in Create a Sim and change the face shape that these will come back. I try and get rid of as many shadows as I can without losing the ones that define the face shape, because those shadows just end up looking blotchy in game. And I get rid of the eyebrows on the base texture and smooth out the lips. I then paint on Emilia's eyebrows. They are a very distinctive feature of her face and I'm painting them to get them to look a bit more Maxis match, but I don't actually like the Maxis match eyebrows, so I couldn't get myself to go all the way with that. I went with a sort of midway compensation and I borrowed her eye to repaint the eye on the skin texture. And here I imported the texture in the Sims 4 Studio, but I wasn't completely happy with it as it lost a lot of its Emilia Clarkeness, so I redid it many times. And here you can see I've kept all the swatches of my attempts. Now, mind you, these actually do look very different in-game, which is why I had to keep loading in and out to change things. And I kept trying, and I'm going with the last swatch because that one seems to have retained the most Emilia Clarke vibe. So over to the jacket, I decided to try and alter the studded in-game jacket with a retexture and remeshing, but the original jacket is very far removed from what I want it to look like. For one, it needs to be mirrored because I need the wrap to happen on the other side, but I'll do that in Blender later. I need these two colors to become one, and I need the sleeves to tuck into the gloves, which are all things that need to happen in Blender, but I have to bear it in mind while I'm working on the texture in Photoshop. I used this hair texture for the black areas inside the collar because I wanted it to look wool-like, but I ended up making it a solid black because it was impossible to match the top flap to the collar with the bottom flap of the collar without seeing the seam there because they are in different places, and in solid black that issue does not exist. So finally in Blender I make her skin into a different part because I'm going to flip the jacket by pressing SX-1, and then I remove the studs and merge back the gap that has created on both sides. I then resized the bottom part of the jacket to be more cropped, which created a gap at the belly, which I'll fix later when I append the skirt part of the costume. I then pinched together the top and the bottom flap of the collar to create one collar flap, which was a nightmare to align, but there you go. I then pull them out like the flaps on Qi'ra's jacket and reattach them to the rest of the jacket to avoid any gaps. I then do a little shimmy around with the vertices around the wrist to make it look like the sleeve is tucked inside the glove. At first I wanted to create the belt just by painting it in the texture, but as I looked at it closer I thought it was too 3D to get away with that, so I decided to create the belt in Blender. It seems to be used to carry her holster and backup ammunition, so you see me creating 4 cartridges, but I'll actually be keeping only one of them because I realized that I'd have to UV paint all 4 of them if I kept them, and if I copy them after unwrapping and painting then they will basically just fall on the same cartridge on the map, and that is all just to save space on the texture map. And I then create the holster from a box. After unwrapping, I give the belt a simple paint in Blender just to block everything out, and to be honest, because the colors are so dark, it was really hard to see what was what. And as I'm doing the proper painting in Photoshop, I could have done the initial blocking in Blender in any color really, which I should have done because I really couldn't make heads or tails of that holster on the UV map. It didn't make any sense to me, but I didn't think of that until I took it to Photoshop, so I left the holster black. Thankfully, the Sims game kind of gives shadows to any 3D objects in-game anyway, so that fixed that issue. I then combine the skirt with the jacket, which I just have to reshape a little, and append the belt to complete the costume. I then combine all these items on the new combined UV map. I've moved the belt texture to the top right free space. The one you're seeing right now is the cleaned up texture fresh out of Photoshop. And then once that's been UV mapped, I copy the ammunition cartridges to make 4 again. Then after a quick weight paint, the costume is ready to be imported into the Sims 4 studio, after which I should have done a costume testing game, but I didn't. I was silly and went straight to the next version of the costume. So she wears another version of this with a red cape and some trousers, and the costume reminded me a lot of the Darth Vader one, the one that exists in-game. So I used that one. I just had to retexture it a bit, take away some details and add some others. And then in Blender, I remove the top half of the body of the costume but keep the trousers and the cape. I then append the costume I just created before and remove everything below the belt. I then tuck in the top bit of the jacket under the cape in the equivalent of what could be called sweeping dirt under the rug. It's not a very tidy job, but it'll do. I then import it into the Sims 4 studio, drop both costume variants into my mods folder and test them in-game. And lo and behold, the horror. So I mirrored the jacket in Blender because I wanted the wrap to happen on the other side, but apparently I didn't do the weight paint properly. So there are bits of the jacket that are sticking to their original place, which creates this horror, and the skirt version is completely invisible, and that's probably because I accidentally made a mission blank, which is why I should have done a test right away. Anyway, I fixed these issues and on the second test everything worked fine. As you can see, the jacket now behaves like a jacket should and no longer like the devil's demon robe. Then I thought I should create her blaster because it features heavily in all her promotional pictures. I mostly box modeled it in Blender with the help of this reference picture and added some cylinders for the barrels. I really enjoy this process actually. I really like claying in actual life, in real life as well with actual clay. It's just fun to see these things take shape before your eyes. Once the side-on modeling is done, I move to the middle to apply the mirror modifier so I can start to shape it. And I kind of went off the guide picture here and I just started shaping it after what I think Blaster should look like because this project has been taking quite a lot of time and I needed to speed things up a bit. So once I finished shaping it, I removed the inside faces of the mirror because I figured if I mirrored it after the UV painting and mapping, the mirror could have just fallen on the same spot as the UV map. So creating two symmetrical sides and I only have to paint the one side. Again, I just do a rough blocking in Blender texture because I can't really make it look nice in Blender itself. I'm just blocking it out where all the details go and then I take the texture to Photoshop to clean it up, give some shadows and highlights and give it some more detail. And once the texture is finished, I add the mirror modifier again and position the blaster in her hand. I then weight paint it to a middle finger like a ring, so you can find it in the accessories as a ring. I actually created two, one for the right hand and one for the left, because the poses that I created for her got mirrored somehow, and I didn't want to have to remake all the poses because that is like hours of work. And it was easier just to attach the blaster to her left hand, so in the showcase pictures she is kind of left-handed. So the final step is create a sim. I'm going to leave you here. I hope that you've enjoyed my sim version of Qi'ra from Solo: A Star Wars Story. If you have any questions or suggestions, please don't hesitate to contact me in the comments down below. All the items can be downloaded from the links provided in the description, or just head over to my website for more custom content. Now, I really want to start creating the Avengers. I wanted to create the robot K2SO from Star Wars, but I think I'll try Iron Man's suit first. Now, K2SO is my favorite Star Wars robot because Alan Tudyk does such a phenomenal job bringing him to life, and I really hope I didn't just butcher his name. But I'd really love to create the Avengers costumes as well, like Iron Man's suit, Captain America. I've already created Black Widow. Ooh, the Wasp. Yes, I really love to create her costume as well. Anyway, let me know if you'd like to see any of these characters or who your favorite characters are. I'd love to know. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the showcase pictures. Have a lovely day and bye-bye!